Hey guys, we're checking out the NEETs to see, probably at this point, what the future of humanity holds for us. No human contact for 7 days. Wait, this is not normal? Okay, leave it in the comments. How many days or months you went without human contact? I'm honestly surprised 3 million people decided to click on that crap. I'm not. Not because it's good, but because I kind of have a lowish opinion of humanity. Anyone else don't really care about being a loser? I'm a man in his late 20s. I never worked or had a romantic relationship, or I just don't give a shit. I'm okay with being a NEET. Like how I can do what I want. I feel liberated. But thing is, if you were rich, then you would be an aspiration of many. But maybe not the no romantic relationship part. But it is important to make a distinction between what you want to do and what others might think highly of, right? And there's definitely can be some overlap. And there are definitely people who say like, oh yeah, you know, the thing that I want and thing that I want to do, yeah, I definitely don't want that. That's what I'm saying right now, that I don't have it. But we do live in a culture where it's sold to you constantly that, you know, what will make you happy? The next bullshit. All the time. I like how I can do what I want. I feel liberated. Like, if I'm just lazy one day and I can just stay all day in bed doing nothing without worrying about wasting a free time day, right? Sure, I also have autism, ADHD, and schizoid disorder, so my brain isn't normal by any means. Honestly, I'm also going to be honest with you all. I'm useless. Like, I don't excel at anything. I have too much OCD for my jobs and all that jazz. Might as well enjoy being a NEET until I die. Also, look at all the veggies from 1910. They're all dead, and their ambition, or whatever, doesn't matter in 2025. Same thing will happen in 2060. No one is going to care that some neurodivergent dude was a NEET in 2025, because there's billions that can replace me and do my job better anyways. Also, society is not exactly kind to those who could struggle. If you struggle, for any reason, it doesn't matter why, you could be totally normal, just possibly had a few unlucky turns in life. Now everyone is rooting for you to die, while fully believing that it would never happen to them. Of course, if it ever did, then they would change their mind very quickly. They call you a loser if you don't support the system that hates you. Don't fall for it. That is kind of true. It's like, do what I want or you're a loser. It's like, okay. So then I'm gonna do what I want. It's like, no, that makes you a loser. Okay. An interesting detour could be that many of the successful people, so to speak, were like ambitious losers in a way. That they possibly and probably were looked down on till they actually made it. And that's kind of messed up. We live in a world where trying things is not that respected unless you make it, right? That's kind of the problem with science too. That the scientists are pressured to find stuff, right? It's not respected if you just do experiments that are worth doing and you don't find stuff that can be used, because everything is evaluated. How does it make me money? Of course, in a sensible society, you would want like a bunch of scientists who are just doing their thing, and you know, most of them will not make it, right? But that is okay, because it is worth for them to try as a whole. And you can expand the same idea to many aspects. But it doesn't matter, because let's suppose you did something that was possibly was worth trying, and let's say that 99 will not make it. Those 99 will be hated, and the one will be cherished like some god, right? Even if they got lucky, even though they're probably not gonna say that. But that is not really the point here. You can even have someone who's a NEET, who's like, let's say that some person has a house and they don't really interact with society that much. Let's say that they have like a bit of a garden. Maybe they make a little bit of money here and there, but they don't have a job and they're not in education. And society would look at that, oh my god, what a waste of a person. We can exploit you for at least millions and millions of dollars throughout your adult life. Of course, you're only gonna see a tiny fraction of that, but that is why I like it. Asian vaging culture is just next level Blake. We're not gonna watch the video, it is simple. You go to work early, stay for long, and then you go home kinda late, and then barely sleep, then go to work again. 1 hour of sleep a day, grim as fuck. Yeah, he's possibly catching up on sleep on the train. Apparently it's a strat in Japan that you might sleep in a net cafe or something, assuming you can have a apartment or a house. Almost certainly you can have a house nearby. In India, old CEOs want employees to work for 90 hours a week. They said hard work is in our culture and Saturday, Sunday are just Western things. They just want employees to slave, live life as a whore and make them rich. They don't give a fuck about mental health, relationships, family, hobbies. Yeah. You're just an animal for them to make money. Nothing else. In fact, worse, because at least you would somewhat cherish that animal. If you had a slave, you would not work it 90 hours a week. I can't believe people are really just living normally. Although, normal in most contexts is either like a value judgment or it just means common. But oftentimes it does not mean good, and many times normal is not the best thing, right? This is self-evidently true. In fact, many times the most apt word to replace normal for would be fucked up. But there's like an underlying theme of it that just because it's common, it's good. Or it's acceptable, right? Because if it happened to one person or very few people, it would be a tragedy. It would be unacceptable. But because it happens to a lot of people, almost everyone, then it's normal. The world feels like a dystopian nightmare right now, with everyone controlled by propaganda through social media. I kind of like how unlocked the NEETs are. Countries are at war either physically or in the real world or online. Tech is being developed so fast that it's only for making the rich richer, right? Also, who owns the tech? They are making spy robots using taxidermied birds. I don't know about that. Because they're not depressed, neurodivergent, or chronically online. They have a career, relationship, friends, hobbies, and grew up in functional families. They are normies. The West has fallen. I would say to this it's complicated because if you go online, you might adopt this mindset. If you just look at the recommended videos, especially if you don't log in and see your normal recommendations on YouTube, then you might see some heavy propaganda. But I would really wish if this was true. Certainly, you can do this. Maybe. But can you really not care or not be affected by politics and economy? Certainly, to a certain degree, that is true. Because most people feel they are powerless to do anything about these massive issues, so they are essentially trying to keep their heads down and find whatever small contentment they can. Sure, but that kind of brings up the topic of, can you be happy on the rack? Suppose society was mostly stalling or possibly getting better a little bit, then you can argue that it's getting better in some aspects. But in many aspects, it's getting worse. So what's the solution to that? To try to not give a fuck? Possibly do whatever you can, then the rest of the time, just entirely escape it. Woohoo! It's the weekend! Let's get drunk! Why is it so complicated to get a job? Why can't I just go there, work and get my money? They require dozens of documents, health check, account in a specific bank, uniform, interview, drug test, mental health, something, I think. This bureaucracy is the reason I'm in NEET. I just want to work, but they prefer to fuck me. Supply and demand. Yeah, that's a good point. Employers treat employees badly because they can. And if we live in a world where you didn't even need an employer, right, at all, then they couldn't do this. Suppose you live in a world where you could make more money, always, than you could make for an employer. In which world, having an employer would make no sense. In fact, it makes little sense in the first place. Why would I make me 100 money when I can make someone else 100 money and they're gonna give me like 10? Oh, I know why, because I don't have a choice. And even then, people are gonna be treated like crap. One idea that I rarely mention, although it is important, that People do not naturally fall into the dominance hierarchy. You have to make them. You kind of have to destroy their spirit with just some bullshit. It's like, oh yeah, you say whatever I want, right? Do whatever I want. And you just kind of like destroy their spirit. Because beating people is out of fashion. So you have to like utterly demoralize them. Make them helpless. That is partly the place bureaucracy serves. Rather than trying to just screw with people. If you try to do something, then the official channels are gonna be so demoralizing that by the end of it, if you get there, you will also request them to rename you to bend over. Power, information, asymmetry, yeah, that's abused. Nepotism and cronyism, fake job postings and internal hirings. Also, young people are really sold on the idea that you make yourself valuable, then you possibly get to have a good life. And that could be true, assuming that those jobs are not offered to those who had a better start in life. Because if you just look at it, those who had better starting positions also tend to go to top colleges way more. And you gotta keep in mind, we just have to assume that they are average. At least average on average. And this means that most of the elite, what we call elite, are fucking idiots. And can only keep their position by keeping others down and keeping others out. Each one of the processes creates even more shit jobs. Also, work has become a cult. They want to make sure you are one of them. In today's work culture, everything is basically a shit test. They want employees who will bend over and spread their cheeks on command. But this is also so annoying. Even when you're like in school or something, it's like, just do what I say. It's like, how about no? They don't want anyone who has any amount of leverage and could potentially walk away for whatever reason. They want a perfect slave. Yeah, that's kind of true. Possibly the best way to torpedo a job interview is to come off as strong-willed. What they might call strong-willed, but essentially not doing what they want. At least potentially questioning what they want. Even a critical thinker would be not welcome. In most cases. Even someone incompetent but compliant would be acceptable. Maybe at the end of the day we'll say like, it's really nice that we didn't get that guy. That guy was smarter than me. Also, they were not massaging my ego. Because worker rights have been stripped by lawmakers in the West since the 70s. Before the 70s, it wasn't uncommon to be able to walk up to a place and start working the same or next day with a respectable wage. The owner class has bribed our lawmakers and lobbyists to strip our rights in the workplace. In the US specifically, Carter and Reagan oversaw the stripping of our collective rights and shifted power to the owner class. Well, more power. And also why the owner class can get away with literal murder with no consequences. This is why society has been on constant decline for the last 50 years. Well said, sir. Also, keep in mind, suppose I bring up an interesting analogy. Suppose you were a slave of some slave master, and you are just working for the slave master to get paid. In this case, I'm calling it getting paid, and get shelter and whatever. And then that slave master, big surprise, gets another slave. Who bought that slave? You did. And keep buying more slaves. So it's kind of funny to me that when it comes to famously recognized sketchy systems throughout history, people might imagine themselves that they would be the one who's standing up to it. While the reality would be that either they would be the one who's exploiting it hardcore to make it even worse, or they would be the ones who's basically just getting by, day by day. Rebellionism does work, but who knows? When the Terminators come in, you're like 10 years tops. Those guys will not mercy you. I think it's because HR has no idea how to hire good people. They just keep adding more stuff, so they'll lose their jobs. Yeah. HR has two goals. First goal of HR is to protect their own ass. This is the top. But the second one would be protect the ass of the company. So the ideal candidate would be someone not threatening, like, oh yeah, I'm really good at my work, but I'm really bad at money, and I love being told what to do. And my lifelong dream is to make money for this company. Most of you hate people, not jobs. Obviously, work itself is pretty damn miserable. If it weren't, why would we need to get paid to do it? Well, it depends on the work, right? You might argue that I'm doing work right now. And there are many things that I don't really mind to do, or perhaps even prefer to do, and I like doing. And I don't mean just nonsense, but things that people get paid for. Yet, even in such cases, it does matter how it happens. For example, you might like farming on your own, but you might not like farming if someone is a total dick to you and while hitting you with some whips or something. Also, a big part of it is like enjoying the fruits of the labor. Even if, let's say that you might go with like, it has no fruits whatsoever, but at least that would be your choice. Still, my point is that at the very least as a society, we don't really optimize activities, not even to be effective, but at the very least not to be enjoyable, at least painful as possible. And people might act dicks just to, I don't know, reveling their superiority, the imagined superiority, no doubt. Enjoying your work is a tremendous fortune, but based on what I've seen here and my own experience, I'm starting to wonder if most people's problems with work have more to do with social aspect of it. Again, when it comes to people, it depends on the person. If they know how to at least shut up and possibly engage with you in a reasonable manner, at the very least, their presence is not going to be negative. If your bosses, co-workers, or customers weren't such a rotten sacks of shit, would the 9-to-5 grind be worth it to you? I don't think you can generalize that everyone sucks. I think that for me is what? That can be some satisfaction in doing something morally difficult and getting paid for it, and for some people, life can get gloomy without something challenging to do. But dealing with people has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. My ideal job would involve zero interactions with other people. I want complete control over who I have to deal with, but that's impossible because we live in a society. True for me, I have no problem with working. It's the people who drain my energy. Personally, if I get to choose what I work on, I get to choose who I interact with, then that's obviously not a problem. I get energy from working and being active. Interacting with people, however, takes a lot of energy. Depends on the person. My theory is that a lot of people make interactions very much about them. And I might think that they're gonna give you a turn too, but you don't care about having a turn. You just want to be gone. I listen to your stuff and I'm leaving. This world is a horrible place and there is no cope. The only thing that can stop the pain is dopamine, jerking off, sugar, drugs, entertainment. Sugar. What he's listing is not quite on the same level. Don't waste your time and money with a psychiatrist. Waste them with those dopes. This will be temporary pleasure, but everything is temporary in this fucking place. Life itself. So just do what you need to get high on dopamine and fuck this terrible place full of terrible beings. OP is a bit mad. But possibly, you also had a day in this life when you felt like it. Yeah, I feel like fuck it today. Why do people not believe us? A lot of us are NEET because of our mental disorders, but I always see people laughing at them. Ultimately, they don't care. The acceptance toward mental health is definitely oversold. Because let's just look at it on a case-by-case basis. Will a workplace care about you having, let's just say, inferior qualities? And they will. Let's just say in a personal interaction, possibly a romantic partner, or possibly a potential friend or coworker. Will they care about it? Yes, they will. In fact, calling it mental health might be even worse, because if you were just a total piece of shit, then you can be redeemed. But if it's mental health, then what is left to do but be the reaper? Like it's just a stupid excuse for lazy people. My own dad is embarrassed by the fact that I'm so dependent and calls me lazy all the time. Well, that's not the worst thing people might call you. I get that it can be hard to understand if you don't experience it yourself, but even other people will just say, I have anxiety and depression, but you don't see me sitting on my ass doing nothing all day. It just makes me sad that I'm suffering so much and my own family doesn't even believe me. The thing is, I can analyze this from many perspectives, but ultimately, possibly even well-meaningly, they don't care. They kind of want you to essentially win. And calling it mental health possibly even makes it worse. Also, you could be potentially wrong, at least in the sense that mental health is the cause. But mental health could be the symptom. It probably doesn't help that clinical terms used to describe mental illnesses are also used in our everyday speech to describe much lesser things. If someone were to tell me that they are depressed, that could mean that they are somewhat down because their football team lost the game, or it could mean that they would shoot themselves if they had a loaded gun in their hand. Even the mental illnesses themselves vary a lot in severity, but they fall under the same name during everyday speech. It's like calling both a person without a leg and a person without any limbs at all disabled. Technically true, but still highly bellying. It's really presumptuous of people to assume that because they were able to function while mentally ill, that must mean anyone who can function with the same category of illness is just being lazy. Also, just look at it systematically. You see mental health problems, but you have to wonder why. And there gotta be variables that cause these mental health problems, and you can look at many things and people are just gonna point out like, it's because of some dumb bullshit, right? Everything's gonna be a distraction. Maybe you should be doing power poses. That's gonna help, because questioning things that serve the interest of others is very much unacceptable. Suppose you were a kid and you went to school and the kids were total dicks. Now what do you have? Do you have a total dicks problem, or do you have a mental health problem? Or do you have a mental health problem because of the total dicks? And ultimate takeaway is that society does not care. Just take your fucking pills and get back to work. Especially autism, no amount of therapy or changing life circumstances can get rid of it. But don't you worry, because we are accepting and cherishing. Not like we're cheering for their death. TLDR, the profit system runs on apathy and psychopathy. Also, generally speaking, like this good and bad just doesn't really exist in the way people believe that it exists. Because your benchmark for good and bad is what you feel toward and what you feel against. And that is subjective, truly, and also partly conditioned. But generally speaking, people tend to feel positively toward personal utility. Anyway, harm is done by the collective. All help, healing, and work has to come from the victim. It's in the same matter of profit being private and bailouts being funded by the public. If a company fails, we are responsible for the bill. If a person fails or is failed by others, they can die on the street. Why do people not believe us? It's cognitive dissonance, doublethink. The mass prattles on about how human lives have value and just reach out for help. They even recognize we are a communal species. Yeah, but if you might believe this if you were never at the bottom, but probably you're not that stupid, because why do you think people are on the streets? People are absolutely screwed. Perhaps outside of some Nordic countries, if you find yourself on hard times, your life expectancy will be measured in months. Now, even right now, the life expectancy between those who are rich and those who are like poor, I mean, just really rich, is decades. Let that sink in. And at the very bottom, it's gonna be very low. At the very top, you're probably looking at like 100. You're gonna have like 9 heart transplants throughout your life. Not a problem. But they don't actually want to do anything benevolent for you. If you try for yourself and fail, it must be that you didn't actually try because they would be responsible for helping. At best, they might give you advice, which is essentially the equivalent of fuck off. And especially if that advice doesn't work, it could be just bullshit. Like, how about you try harder, right? And like, I don't know if you could, but let's suppose you did, possibly to the point where it's not reasonable. Like you start sprinting in a marathon. It's like, oh yeah, you're playing a marathon and like you're only not winning because you're not sprinting. Let's say you start sprinting and that might even self-sabotage you. Like, you're losing because you suck, or like, haven't tried hard enough, or some bullshit. The thing is, I'm telling you this, hopefully it's gonna save some of you. You should not give a fuck about any of this bullshit. If you just look at what happens instead of all the bullshit people say, people will generally not like that. Because on one hand, they say like, I care about you so much. On the other hand, they don't. And possibly even sabotaging you. Now, possibly you can excuse not giving a fuck. Because, there are 8 billion people out there I guess I don't give a fuck about most of them. Not in a sense that I actually do something to help them. Or at least, I think most people would argue that. But trying to use them while saying how much you love them is messed up. And that's kind of the game we play. Oh, we love the children so much. Exactly how? We love their work. You love it when they slave for us. It's not that you were set up for failure by others. It could be. You're choosing failure, yeah. But also, you gotta keep in mind that what is education? They kind of like... Now, this is getting a bit dark, but it is true. Like, what do people tell you? Do they teach you to exact your self-interest? Unlikely. They usually, at best, they teach you to partake in a word in a collaborative fashion, which you might argue is positive. But many times, that's not what they're teaching you. They're kind of teaching you to serve them, to believe things that serve them. So if someone just told you that, this is the money, boys, this is the money we use, like, wow, I really like this money. I'm just going to make my own money and then you can trade for my money. It's like, yeah, then you get punched in the face. Because they're highly incentivized that you serve their interest. And it might not seem like this because maybe most things are not going to be like that. But the most important things will be. So you get to have your freedom, so to speak, when it doesn't matter. But not when it does. If you're abused by others or live in any other hell made by others, you, the victim, are the problem. You are not responsible for being abused, but you are held practically responsible. Yeah, that's a good point, because no one cares, right? You need to cope. You need to be grateful. You need to be psychiatrically imprisoned. You need to be chemically lobotomized and castrated. You need the police sent after you to enforce this. None of this will be done to the abuser, only the victim. It kind of depends on who wins, right? Especially if the abuser is a winner, so to speak. Then they can be cheered by society for their winning. And no one cares about the losers because ultimately they are not useful to you. And you can even see this in even romance fantasy. What is the apex of romance fantasy for women? It's like, the CEO who exploits people. Right! We love that guy. Not because they're helping people and giving away their money. Obviously not. But because they're taking it. Because they are the one who are the total dick. It does not bother the fantasy, in a way, that they are kind of a bad person to others, but they actually enhances it. Because you want someone who's a good person to you, but bad to others in your favor. And that is what you see in the king, prince fantasy as well. So they are total dick to others. Possibly that's not what they believe. Most likely that's not what they believe. But that is the fantasy. I can get with the prince. Maybe they act nice, but it's pointless. Like, oh, look at that. This peasant girl, I'm gonna give her an apple. Oh, look at this peasant, I'm gonna give him an apple too. I'm such a good person. And that's kind of concerning. That humans are kind of wired, but definitely not for goodness, but just to see it as like a social hierarchy. And most importantly, possibly praise those who are in high, but taking a high position in a social hierarchy. No doubt, they are being a negative influence to others. Because suppose you had 100 things and you had 100 people. What would be the most effective distribution of the 100 things? Every single person gets it. But that doesn't work if you want to be greedy, right? So you want to take and then claim that life is a game of musical chairs. It is done because of the victim's wrong thing for having sane and human thoughts to insane and inhuman treatment. I fucking love this comment. The system will never take responsibility for itself, and others will very rarely, especially at personal cost, will take responsibility for themselves. Because you might see, even the YouTubers, then they might say oh, I'm sorry, I got caught or something, right? You hear this all the fucking time. But they're never sorry in a way that matters. It's okay, just give me all your money. Just give me everything you have, and then, just delete your channels and okay, say the sorry. Obviously not. You're just gonna say I'm just gonna sorry and possibly plug my promotion after that. So you might as well say I'm not sorry. Maybe I'm not gonna do the same scam again, but I'm gonna do others and I'm definitely not gonna go away. And it's so stupid too, because you might have someone who like possibly got rich for some stupid gamble. Maybe they invested in a stock and it went to the moon, right? It's like, oh my god. And then they are like some kind of legendary investor. Even though most will not make it, but this guy who once invested in that stock is now feel empowered to be a thought leader to humanity. And also, most importantly, just write a bunch of books, hold a bunch of talks of how superior they are. They can now teach the mob. Of course, they can just say, like, I played the lottery and won. That would be unacceptable. You can make the abuser change, and might does not make right. Yeah, it's kind of concerning that very much so, it does, our world does look like that. That the might make right, Mike's made right, and it kind of looks a little socially Darwinistic. And I did notice this in media as well, that it's very much that kind of thinking is taken as self-evident. For example, I noticed that in anime, and not just anime that possibly deals with fantasy or sci-fi, especially like fantasy, but like current day anime, the saying that Jaku Niku Kyo Shoku, essentially the weak is meat and the strong eats, which is purely socially Darwinistic. But of course, if you love that mindset, if you're the one who imagined themselves to be strong, because like, if you're the kind of person who had a good start in life, then like, yes, it's a winner game, baby. Anyhow, it's said by those who use violence against their victims, the weak, to force them into submission. Yeah. You gotta keep in mind that the dominant religion in the West would be Christianity, which teaches people to turn the other cheek. So you have people who love to punch and take, who teach others to turn the other cheek. But of course, the entire game is driven by hypocrisy. Sure, you might see more honest, possibly more sincere Christians, but ultimately it does have a very strong element that, I'm a good guy and whatever I do is good. And other Christians bend over for me. Their physical violence is right. Your private thoughts are wrong. Ultimately, if you think about it, that everything is backed by violence. Because why would I care about some guy claiming to have some dirt? Like, I don't care about that. Or, they're claiming to have some fantasy points. Like, I don't care about that. That's not good for me. Suppose you have like 10 people and one person is claiming that, I have all the dirt and I have some fantasy points. Now you guys slave for me. It's like, yeah, how about no? They can flip the deal on you. It's like, no, I don't think so. And how are they going to enforce it? With violence and education. You have to educate people that it's your dirt and they got to take your fantasy money. So one guy can teach maybe like two guys to be enforcers and the rest of them to be educated citizens who hold the right thoughts. And you need all this bullshit because if you did it straight, then it would not work. They are empathetic at best, or they are actively put effort into harming you. This is all covered up with the cloak of humanism to keep the system running. The system as a whole is abusive. Abuse is how it sustains itself. You need to labor for others. If you don't, you will impede the line going up. It's kind of a pyramid game too. Because the average Joe makes money for their boss, and the promise of all of this is that their kids who are coming in will care about this whatever fucking bullshit money they have. And suppose they did not, right? Then what is the game? Well, let's just say that it's strangely apt today, or these days, is that, they're gonna be no kids. Or possibly just get magicked away to some other land. Who's gonna take your money? And why? If you're not physically capable of laboring, you're lying. Yeah. If you don't look absolutely miserable, but possibly even if so, then I guess you need to get back to work. You're lying. You will always be the problem, not the actual problem. People get angry at you when you are in need. If you work, you won't have people too angry at you. People will get angry when you do not work. But society, okay, but why not get fucking angry at those who are not working but also have a crap ton of money? So that would be my main beef with the homies. that you're not mad at those who live utterly parasitical lifestyles. Let's say that there was like one guy who has like, thousands of rentals and they're living the most degenerate life. Obviously, they're not working, but that is fine. No doubt there could be some resentment toward them because like they kind of don't like that. People don't like the renting game that much these days. But perhaps if they did some kind of other parasitic thing that possibly was very respected these days, then it would be okay. Or maybe they can just have a trust fund with like $100 million and they're just like sitting on it. And that's fine too. Yeah, normies expect you to conform to society. If you don't, you pretty much be outcasted, but who cares? I find it funny how people will ask, what do you do for a living, as one of the first thing they ask about you. Also, you can see that people like to slot you in immediately. Like, where do you fit in? Like, they look at your face, they look at your clothes, they look at your mannerisms, they look at how you hold yourself. They ask you about things just to see what kind of ranking they could give you in a social hierarchy. And that is why people tend to be incentivized to maybe even not even lie, but present themselves very favorably. So a very odd thing to me, but you see it all the time, that especially when people meet for the first time, they are kind of trying to establish themselves as like, kind of try to establish their status. So they might say like, hello, I'm Bob. I have a job that, possibly they're not gonna say the money, but like that is that job that makes kind of maybe that in that range of money, and I have a house, I have a wife. So this is just all not really to further the conversation, but to say like, I have status, I have status, I have status. Maybe they're gonna say like, look at my car, I have status. Look at my clothes, I have status. I'm better than you, perhaps. Or at least I have a pretty good ranking in the social hierarchy. And suppose you don't care about this. You might be even well off. It doesn't matter. But if you don't care about this, you don't engage in this ritual of sort, then people might hate you. They're like, oh my god, who does this guy thinks is? Like, also many would naturally just assume that just because you're not saying things, it is because you have nothing to say. But also, you gotta keep in mind that when it comes to status, it's not about what you care about, or possibly what you value. Or possibly you maybe others value what you value, but they don't value what you value, and possibly many other things. So my point is that status is not really fixed, and they might even try to dig at your status or of sort. But ultimately, I would be thinking like, how fucking stupid the whole thing. Why would I fucking care? You get to believe whatever dumb bullshit you want. I don't care. And don't just assume that I'm saying this because I possibly have nothing to say. But suppose you even talk in a way that you possibly brag, or like, oh yeah, that thing and that thing. And then they might put you on a pedestal. It's like, oh yeah, man. It's like, fucking just stop. It's painful. Just don't do it. But there's also an expectation in society, and you might see this in many cultures, that you're expected to talk up at people. And in rare cases, possibly in other cases, you're expected to talk down at people. Like, I am so superior to you. I'm establishing my superiority. And if you're not talking up at people, then like, they get mad. Don't you see that I'm better than you? It's like, yeah, feel free to believe whatever you want. Now, this is not necessarily just based on achievement, but this could be completely arbitrary, like based on age, or possibly even meaningless title. That really does not mean any ability, but they just have it. They just happen to have it. Like, I don't care about that. But you're supposed to, and everyone's just supposed to play some kind of shared fantasy, like shared delusion, where people are like slotted in some kind of a magical make-believe social hierarchy, where those who have it better also get to have more, and those who have it worse just kind of treated badly. It is just nonsense. Like, imagine if just, people got mind wiped from all this bullshit. It's like, that is my dirt. People must respect my dirt. Oh, this is my paper. Everyone must respect my paper. This is the title I have. Everyone must respect this bullshit. Like, imagine if just humanity just got mind wiped from all this bullshit. I'll just get shit done and share it. But no. But it really goes beyond trying to get more for yourself. But it's just dumb bullshit, right? Just dumb bullshit ritual. And they might claim that, a social hierarchy is a good idea. Fine. Then I am your god. You all worship me. And they're gonna be like, oh, no, I meant me. So ultimately my takeaway would be, feel free to believe whatever bullshit you want. I will not care. And we like that kid too. Anyway, I was at the gym about 2 weeks ago, and some old dude started talking to me and almost immediately asked me what my job is. And the guy literally didn't even know my name yet or introduce himself at all. This would be the equivalent of some guy just comes over to you, and while doing so, they're just beating their chest to show their dominance. It's like these fuckers are sent by the Matrix to interrogate us. Low for real. It's so annoying to me, too. And usually from people who really like boundaries, they don't deserve our time or answers because they can't even be respectful themselves, in my opinion. I think those types just usually want to brag about themselves, so they ask you about that topic, so you can say, and what about you? And almost certainly the expectation here, if they want to feel good about it, is that you say something that's kind of below them, so they get to feel good about themselves. Because suppose you had a lot to say. They might hate you for it. Because you just know that some guy who's coming over to you, beating their chest, looking to stroke their penis, is not coming over to be eclipsed by you. And eclipsed in a big way. Maybe after that engagement, they're gonna go into the parking lot and try to forget about that engagement while enjoying their loud truck. Caring about NPC's opinion is a recipe for disaster. Just live however you want, mate. Life is short. Everything is in moderation. Tell them to go fuck themselves and give them the finger. That's a bit much. I hate hearing kids don't want to work these days. Of course I don't. Oh my god. But work usually doesn't mean that do anything productive these days. They are not saying that. But work means, in almost all contexts, that they don't want to work a job that exploits them and treats them like shit for the rest of their life. Almost certainly, if you see a person and they have some free time, or especially if they are well off, and this could be the biggest argument for an UBI, that those who are well off, although they definitely could be enjoying and like possibly call them elite idiots before because they get to take the elite roles, even though they're not particularly suited for them just because they have a wealthy background. But my point is, they do stuff. And they're probably gonna do more impactful stuff, possibly, than an average person, because they're gonna focus on it. Sure, many of them are possibly gonna be degenerates. Especially not for oligarchs. Eat the rich, fuck corporations, fuck capitalism, or the kleptocracy, or whatever the hell people want to call this broken dystopian society. But this is a good example to show that, suppose people contributed towards something that actually mattered, then they actually might contribute for free. You say open source, exactly that. Or, even if it has to be personal interest, then it has to be your interest, right? If you get to make money and you get to keep the money, it's not too bad. But if your only option is making money for others, maybe not. A job a lot of us on this sub could get. High school equivalent. Autism, 1 year, required. Possibly the only time ever autism was a plus. Maybe too early to celebrate. Perhaps they would require you to demonstrate how autistic you are.